ask, thank you. Could I ask Michael Russell particularly, but the rest of the panel as well, in light of what is happening now in Britain, what does he feel the chances are of a cross-party agreement, consensus, on a soft Brexit? In other words, associated membership, EEA. What are the chances of that? Because at the moment, that seems to me to be the only realistic, practical, medium-term project.
Okay, let's start with the fact that I don't accept yet as an absolute given that Scotland will not be a member of the EU. I don't accept that, and I think it's right not to accept that. It may be the most likely solution that we will be outside the EU for a period of time, but I don't accept that that's an inevitability, and I certainly don't accept that Scotland should resile from some of the things that we've heard here this evening. You know, we could debate some of them and some of the interpretations of history, but I don't think that we should resile from our ambition to see ourselves pooling sovereignty and working with people in the way that some of that has been very well portrayed this evening. But if you took as the starting point that we would be leaving with the rest of the EU, with the rest of the UK, then I think the nature of that now is at the centre of the debate, as you indicate. Negotiator, my counterpart David Davis is technically the chief negotiator. There is no published mandate. I think it would be impossible for them to publish a mandate.
One of the, I think, very strong lessons that came from that performance was the indivisibility of the single market. This is not just about material gains. It is about material gains. The single market is an economic event which has promoted growth and prosperity, but it's also, its source, a political project. And the European Union of 27 are not about to sacrifice the efforts which were very well demonstrated in that production that they have been going through really since the end of the Second World War in order to please the UK. So I think there'll be, and I don't think this is about punishment or retribution, this is just the reality. They've invested enormously in this project. Politicians have sacrificed iconic issues. The Deutschmark was mentioned. I mean, you don't give up the German mark for a giggle. You know, this is how much it meant to the German government. The new French government have made it very, very clear. This is a meaningful part of the French fabric. They're very normative, their values.
And if I can add something to this confusion, I think there's a real paradox behind Brexit, and behind, not just behind Brexit, but behind the normal attitude of the British people toward the EU and before the EU toward the European Economic Community since the 70s, I think. Because behind those goals that we have read, for example, in the Schuman Declaration in 1950, behind those goals there are British thinkers of the 30s. The Federal Union was a movement which was born in Britain.
Just briefly from my side, I think there should be a cross-party approach to Brexit, but the problem is that nobody knows what Brexit means and what's hard Brexit and what is soft Brexit. And it strikes me every time when either politicians or media say EU wants to punish us. And it's not a punishment. If you're not in the club, you can't have benefits. Imagine how angry the other 27 member states would be if Britain kept all the benefits but was outside of the European Union, so not contributing to the EU. The other issue that I saw with the referendum, of course, there was a lot of debate about how the campaign was handled and how about, you know, post-truth, fake news, etc. that we witnessed. But what struck me is when I had my family visiting from Slovenia, we were walking around and they saw the headlines and they were going, but Alenka, do people actually believe this? And my family is not, you know, they don't have university degrees, they're not the most educated people on the planet, but they were...
Hi, Bess Anderson from EU Citizens for Independent Scotland. I want to address the issue of communication, or rather miscommunication, as we've seen that has been exposed with Brexit.
We need migrant workers, particularly in Scotland, where we have a huge demographic problem. The miscommunication thing, I entirely sympathize. I think it was an appalling travesty. And not only the miscommunication, but the fact that people who tried to point out the facts, and I say in my entire professional circle were those who were trying to mediate and trying to make points. And Michael Gove's dreadful comment, we've had enough of experts. Now, when you get into that land where people who have spent their lives researching something, not because it's hugely well paid or they get honours from it, but because that's what they do, are being told you're a liar or, I mean, I've got a very good friend, Michael Dugan at Liverpool University. Go on YouTube, he's had millions of hits. I've seen his mail. I mean, people saying things to him that are just dreadful.